Here's another update of Zachary and his care and how he's doing. You'll get some interruptions and you'll hear a little more noise today. Zachary's more active today, thank God. And he loves Blue's Clues, so I have that in the background and nurses come in. So bear with me and I'll give you the update and in the middle of just taking care of business here. So last night, Zachary did pretty well. He had some trouble yesterday was just a really rough day. He was throwing up a lot with a tube intubation still there. They're having to keep the tube in because his lungs just are not strong enough, and he's not strong enough to get the stuff out of his lungs and to breathe on his own yet. And we believe that, well, I believe and some nurses believe that they were giving him too much food in his stomach, pumping too much into his stomach for food, and it was getting irritated, and so some of it was coming up and a lot of stuff from his lungs was coming up. So they backed off of that, and it took the day for his body to calm down. When he was awake, he was quite irritated and vomiting, and they had to sedate him more. And so it was a little bit rough, but for about an hour between 10 and 11, he had trouble as well. And then from 11 to around 5:50 in the morning, he slept really well. I thank God I get to stay here in the room with him day and night. They allow me to stay here the whole time and to watch him. And I'm very happy about that because I can see what's happening and if he's having trouble breathing and call the nurses if he's throwing up or whatever's going on. So it's worked out really good for me to be here. And this morning when he woke up, he was gagging a little bit more, and I was kind of sad to see it, but we took care of taking stuff out of his mouth and helping him get comfortable, and they sedated him a little bit more. And about an hour later, the chief of staff and the other doctors and nurses that work in ICU, they go door to door to look at all the patients. And although I speak very little German, I understood that the chief of staff was very upset. He doesn't come in. We've never seen him come in. He leaves it to the doctors to take care of, and they are just fabulous. The doctors and nurses here are wonderful. Just everyone's wonderful. So the chief of staff thought that maybe, well, he believed that Zachary, because he's very sick, was having seizures. And he was very upset because they were giving him sedation. Well, we just had to give him sedation to keep him calm so he wasn't gagging so bad. But it was lowering his heart rate, and he was believing that they weren't seeing the signs that he was so sick and had a fever that he was having seizures. And the doctors asked me questions and the nurses asked me questions after they had done the rounds with everybody. And I know for sure Zachary hasn't had any seizures since the first 2 or 3 days since we've been here. Thank God, even with the fever. The seizures have been not here. So it was just an upset stomach that was coming up from just too much feeding. So they slowed that down a bit, and things have been good. I've been working on, he's of course had edema in his hands and his feet, which is normal. I'm a retired massage therapist and lymphologist, so I know how to get that down. So I was working on that all day yesterday, and it's lower today. Still has some, but it's a lot lower. He's doing much better with that. I've just been praying over him and reading the Bible to him, being with him. He loves Blue's Clues, so I always have that in the background, and that keeps him happy. As long as I'm holding his hand, he stays calm. So today they switched his sedation to something that keeps him more active, but he still rests quite a bit. His heart rate is up, and he's doing much better. His respiration is good. It wasn't good yesterday. He was breathing very heavily because he felt sick. And everything's going smooth for the moment. Things are tiny bit better, but he's still got a long recovery ahead. They're going to do a bronchial scope, which is look into his lungs later this afternoon and see how things look in there. They're not taking out as much fluid as they were before, which is good, and the fluid doesn't look quite as bad from what I can see as it has in in the past days. So that's looking better. I don't know the lab results yet. No one has talked to me about the lab results, but overall, Zach's acting stronger just from a mother's point of view. I wanted to go over and share with you. We get these wonderful comments on Facebook, on Tim's wall, on my wall, and they're really great. We really enjoy them, and some of them I just feel like commenting on because they're areas that I think that as believers it's important for us to look into and talk about honestly what's going on. And instead of shaming people and where they're at, really be able to see their heart of what they're trying to say and what their own struggles are and where they're at. And so there's this person who has written a couple comments that are just you'll see are maybe shocking to most people, but to Tim and I, we really see this person's heart. They really have a heart for us, and we're very appreciative of all of you who are praying for us and have a heart for us and for our two sons. And so I'm going to read this post, and you guys will probably have a reaction to it, but I want you to know that we're actually this person's trying to be very nice, and I think a lot of people feel the same way that this person does, but it's either not appropriate from your social circles to admit that you feel like this on the inside when you feel out of control, and I think it's really just important to be honest with where we're at. We're all human, and it's very hard. So here's the post. This is so astonishing that Tim and Katrina want their 23-year-old autistic son to live instead of the burden of his care being lifted from them. An Assemblies of God pastor I knew from California was relieved and thankful when an autistic, brain-damaged, or whatever son died. It was a horrible 16 years that was finally over. But here are Tim and Katrina who don't want to be relieved of a similar or worse burden. Wow. My heart goes out to that pastor. It is not easy being a caretaker. There is no doubt it is not easy being a caretaker, and most caretakers would agree. They're definitely overlooked. And I also think, my heart goes out to this pastor and how difficult it was for that family, and I can relate. It is not an easy thing to have a special needs person, someone that has, whether it's a mental illness or a physical illness or ailment or whatever it is more work on a family, and financially it's more difficult. Life is more difficult, definitely. And we've gone through different phases of learning and growing. I think some people are natural caretakers. It's just their gift. They're gifted at it, and everyone has their different gifts. I wouldn't say that I'm gifted at taking care of autistic people. I think I feel like Moses most of the time when he first said, when God said for him to go into Egypt and take out the people, he says, I'm slow of speech. I don't speak very well, and I don't think I should do it. I think you should send somebody else. You feel like that. Definitely on your own strength, you know that you cannot face what's in front of you. So I feel like that many times. But, over and over and more, Zachary has been such a blessing to us because he's been important for our growth to understand the heart of God and be able to learn how to have peace in the middle of hardship. We wouldn't know half the things we know. I think I said this in the last update, if we didn't. About 3 weeks ago, we were at a Bible study, and the pastor asked in the Bible study, so who prays for trials? And of course, nobody raised their hand except for me. And he was surprised, and he asked me further. I said, look, I know that it's in trials that we get to push into being closer to God and being able to learn how to trust Him better. So you either trust Him better or you're more miserable. And if you're more miserable, it just shows your lack of trust. And I know people may argue with me on it, but I brought up this scripture in James chapter 1, verse 2. It says, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, which is patience. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." So notice that when we're in trials, it helps to perfect us. It's the gold refined in the fire that Christ told us to pray for in Revelation. And so this is an important part. Guys, I would probably be interrupted more, so it's going to be a little rough here. But going back to being perfected, with Christ saying that, pray for me, gold refined in the fire, and clothes for your nakedness, and salve for your eyes, in Revelation chapter 3. So if you think about the gold refined in the gold refined in the fire is all about tribulations and trials. And it's during that time that God can shine the brightest, because we should be different. It should be a place where we have peace, where most people absolutely fall apart. And just thank God. We know, just because of having Zachary and because of the difficulties we've had living in Costa Rica and different places, and things thrown at us through life, we've learned that you can either go through it in a lot of fear and feel alone, or you can learn how to relax and know that you are not in control, and He is in control, and He is a good God. He's the best God, and He is taking care of everything. And so you get to push into what you truly believe, and not just think it in your head, but walk it out and believe it in your heart when you get tested in trials. And it helps us to get to where we're supposed to be spiritually. So, you struggle more. Either way, it's like Christ. Christ learned things through the things He suffered. So we know that suffering is just a part of the path. We were promised suffering. Christ even promised us suffering. So it's how we suffer should make a difference. We should be able to be a light to the world, that we do things differently and we believe differently, that people go, "What? How come you guys have peace when everyone else does not have peace?" And it's okay to lose your peace. It's okay to be afraid. I'm not saying that you're not afraid and you don't lose your peace. But what I'm saying is that in the middle, even if you are losing your peace or you're afraid, you have hope and you have trust in God. We do not have power over death and sometimes sickness and these things going. All right, so my point is, I'm getting interrupted here and there, like I said I would, and that's normal. It's really great. People are taking care of us here, and Zachary's more active. But my point is that God shines brightest when we show how much we can trust Him. He is in control of death. He's in control of life. And He always gives us things to do that are harder for us to do on our own strength, on purpose, because then He can show up. And if we act peaceful and go slow, Tim and I teach this stuff, and we have it in some podcasts in our support team. The series that we've done on called Ending Disconnection from God, it goes into this in depth, and we have to do our own work. We do our own work, and we get tested just like everyone else. And people sometimes say, "Well, you don't have to minister to us. You don't have to go there and minister to us. You should just take care of your own family," and we understand. And it's okay if we had to, no problem. And when people need to, I believe in pacing yourself and finding out what you can and can't do, and making sure and clear what you are doing. I teach that as well. But just like, you can minister to others even in the middle of your own hurts, because we are given the strength of God. We're given supernatural strength. So, for instance, yesterday, one of the nurses came in, and just by a fluke, she mentioned that there was another nurse who was down with a headache. I went, "Where is she?" Because God has been good. I have a gift to be able to usually get rid of headaches. So I went and laid hands on her and helped her out. And within 5 minutes, her headache was gone, and she was able to work. And we also do fellowship meetings on Sunday nights. We were able to do that in the room with Zachary. And It's when you can show, like, for instance, Paul, if you go into his story, what he talks about, most of the time he was poor, he was being abused, he was being run out of town, shipwrecked, all these different things, and yet he never stopped serving, ever. And he was able to do it because he had the strength of knowing God was with him. He had the strength of the focus of what he was doing, which is how Christ made it too, by the way, to the cross and out, and everything that he did for us in the same way. So if we're to become like Christ and like the other saints, it's how you treat going through your trials that's going to make a difference to the world, that's going to say, what do you know that I don't? Because when I'm in trials, I don't do well. And I see you, and you're going through it different. I want the hope that's within you. So, there's sometimes that Tim and I, we only had once actually for about a half hour where we were kind of shaky, and we got back into the Word and got back into these things that I'm sharing with you and reoriented, and we've been fine and peaceful ever since. Tim and I are doing well. I am slightly at, running a little behind on my sleep, but just a little bit. I've been sleeping really well, and God's been really good to me, and I'm calm and pacing myself, and Tim and I are working together well as a team. So we keep going, and we know that Zachary will get better. It's just going to take some time, but we know for sure that God isn't finished with Zachary, even though it doesn't always look good. We know he's not finished with him. And even if he was, glory be to him forever and ever, and praise always. So thank you for keeping up with us, and I'll try to continue to give updates. And they'll be kind of rough like this just because with Zachary being more active, I'm all over the place, and the nurses coming in and everything. But we love all of you, and we appreciate all of you. And thank you for your comments. Keep them coming. Thank you for your prayers. They're so important to us. And for those that have given money and offerings, we thank you genuinely. And those that can't give it, please don't feel guilty. God gives everything. He provides everything. He owns everything. And if the only thing you're supposed to do is pray, that is huge, 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 huge. So we'll take it. And we bless all of you as well, and hope that all of you are blessed for supporting us. And we're grateful for all of you, and we give you a big hug. All right, bye for now. I'll try to give you more updates as I get more information. Love you. Bye.